Matura's Mandala. So where were we?
Well, I want to make it clear that I'm not at all unhappy about the choice I made.
Yes.
But I do want to make it clear that the point of view of the ISKCON devotees about what's going on with all this is so ridiculous because they just have no connection to what was really the Gaudiya Math. You know, they just know from Prabhupada what he says it was. You know.
Yeah.
So you know, I think what Prabhupada did is absolutely astounding, and the fact that he became Prabhupada by Krishna's arrangement due to what he did, and the fact that he had the background he did of being a fringy like that, with gaining all this knowledge and information about the world, which made him able to preach and discuss things with all these scientists in the West, which no Swami had ever done before, and to defeat them and make them look like fools. I mean, it was astounding, and I myself know the Mahamantra because of Prabhupada going and doing that.
Yeah.
And we all do. And there's no way to, it's just wonderful, you know? And but how they look at it, that ISKCON was somehow started by a Gaudiya Math guru. Prabhupada became what he became. He wasn't that when he left.
No.
And his godbrothers were not thinking that one of us is going to America to preach. They were not thinking that. They didn't even really know what he was doing. You know? And then when they would see these back to Godheads coming, and they just looked ridiculous, you know? With everybody like a gypsy circus, you know? And girls and guys and sannyasis, and it's all a big group of hippies, and you know that just looked really weird to that Gaudiya Math people.
Of course, it looked very, and then you also at that time you had even commercial movies like Hare Krishna Hare Ram, which was all set in Nepal, and it was all kind of giving a mishmash. The Hare Krishnas are hippies and stuff. But the thing is,
and I became really good friends with that guy who made that movie. Yeah, I became really good.
Devanand.
You know, Devanand.
Yeah.
I was at his house and and talked to him, and he became on one of my committees when I organized the Bhajan Sammelan in Bombay. He was on the committee and helped me to organize it and got people stars, and so I knew all these people, you know, but I knew them through Ban Maharaj. I knew them all through Ban Maharaj. Everybody knew Ban Maharaj. Everybody knew him, you know.
The difference between when Bon Maharaj went, we've mentioned this before, in the 30s, before the war, and when Prabhupada came, you know, in the mid-60s, when the hippie and the counterculture and like you escaping from the Vietnam War and all of that, it was another world. And even Prabhupada, when he saw what those were, you know, it's like even in 65, 66, the hippie thing was just kind of brewing. And when Allen Ginsberg, who was like the guru of the hippies, came, you know, he was kind of educated. He wasn't like a teenage hippie. And it was, you know, and so, yeah, and I mean, the whole story of Prabhupada and the starting of ISKCON is this thing that just happened. And Mulla Prakriti, Mulla Prakriti in her book, where she's talking to all these people who knew Prabhupada before he went to her, nobody thought that he was going to become a guru. He wasn't oozing charisma and all of this. It was a...
Well, why should they?
Yeah.
Why should they?
Yeah.
Why should they?
Yeah.
I mean, when he did what he did, okay, now everybody's like, wow, you know, if they could, the more they could understand it, the more they'd be impressed. But prior to that, why should they be impressed? You know,
the thing is when you follow the thread of how you met Prabhupada, how we all did, it's the thread. It's Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati telling him that's your thing. That's what you're going to do. So he
Right.
took that on. They all had joining Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, like Bon Maharaj did, was probably when he was in his 20s and then developing in his 30s as an educator when
24.
24.
He got sannyas when he was 24.
Okay.
He was 24 years
And
old.
you're talking now, you yourself are about 27 now at this time, because you've been in India. You arrived when you were 20, and now that
Right.
you've been there. So you're still very, very young. And Prabhupada came to America when he was nearly 70. It's a whole different story. He's gone through a different story in life. And that's kind of the thing is, in this the perspective of Prabhupada with the Gaudiya Math and the Gaudiya Math with Prabhupada. You see, Prabhupada was on that mission and he was independent. And one of the people he had lots of communication with was Narayan Maharaj, because he had that connection from Mathura on personal levels, like, can you send me a mridanga? Can you do me this and do that? So he was out on his own. He was not going there as a representative of the Gaudiya Math. He was representing what he was doing.
Absolutely.
And then so when he arrived in Boston on that plane, he says, I don't know why you brought me here. You brought me here. I don't know how my words are going to have an effect. It was a kind of, so it's like you say, it's a kind of miracle, really.
No, it's wonderful. It's absolutely a leela.
But it's
just incredible.
but it's also.
But I mean, nobody knew about it. Nobody in India knew that the future was going to be that.
No, at all.
But I mean, ISKCON people act like they should have all known it in advance.
Yeah.
Like ISKCON, the Gaudiya Math people, didn't they recognize that 50 years ago? Like, okay.
Well, it's
50 years ago, they didn't even know who he was.
Yeah. Okay, so there we are back in your story, and you're reconnecting. You've gone with Devananda. You've gone through this complex thing. They've tried to kind of arrest you because of visas and stuff, and you've kind of in Delhi, and you've actually kind of done a bunk and escaped, and you've kind of you're still a fugitive, even in India now. The police have arrested you, but you've done a bunk. So you've arrived in Mayapur. So tell us the story again from there, because we had a little.
Well, I went upstairs to see Prabhupada, and he was really glad to see me, and I spoke to him in English, but, and he spoke to me a bit in Bengali. When he would speak in Bengali, then I was reply in Bengali, but I wouldn't just. I called him Gurudev because I didn't know about this Prabhupada thing.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't a big thing in '73.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Gurudev, and I didn't know. So he was really nice, and he told me to stay in the room next to his, and with Srila Kirti, and then every single day I had to. Well, I didn't have to, but every single day he would call me in his room and we'd talk,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes we were working on stuff, and sometimes we weren't. But the next morning, after I got there, I went downstairs for the kirtan.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned this before, but so I go downstairs to the kirtan. There's about 100 people, and the kirtan's going on, and Prabhupada's sitting up there, and then at the end of the kirtan, when they come into the Prema Devani prayers,
Mm-hmm.
everybody hits the ground
Mm-hmm.
like it was a bomb test or something. And I'm standing in the middle of 100 people, looking around like, what's going on? I look at Prabhupada, what's happening? And he knew exactly what I was thinking. I could see he knew exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking, what is going on here? This is like, what are we doing?
For the benefit of those people who have no idea what we're talking about, they may not be familiar with the Krishna thing. Is that
the Prema Devani
Yes.
is done standing up and playing instruments.
And what is? And what are the?
And then the key jai, they would hit the cymbals of the mridanga. Everybody's standing up doing this.
Yes.
And at the end of that, everybody bows down.
At the
That's
end of
pranam,
that, yes.
But here I was in a situation where they're all doing that early.
Yeah, they'd hit the ground all together during the whole thing.
And you can't place and you can't do things and you can't go jive because you've got your head down and you're not on the instruments. And I'm looking right at Prabhupada. What am I supposed to do? Because 100 people are all bowing down and I'm standing in the middle of this, thinking, what's happening? And I had no idea that was backwards.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada gave me this look on his face that like he knew exactly what I was thinking. And later that afternoon, I asked him about it. And he told me what had happened. And He said it was going to be fixed. I told Prabhupada, how are we going to have a kirtan with the Gaudiya Math? At the end of the kirtan, we do this and they do the opposite. So, have we got the new normal? Is the new normal better than the old normal? Because the old normal is definitely, you can play the instruments and you can bang cymbals and you can do all this and everybody's doing it. And why are we doing the opposite of that? I mean, it's just one little thing, and people give me a hard time. Why are you worried about one little? I'm like, what is this new normal? What is the value of this new normal? You know.
Well, that's good. So that's
exactly,
your first a major culture shock. So you've come there, you've been in this world, and suddenly there's this. What's going on? Okay, so then that's the next morning, and then what happened? Then how did it develop?
Well, then I started being with Prabhupada every day and speaking in Bengali, and he wanted me to help with the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I really didn't want to do that because I don't know how to read and write Bengali. You know, if it was Devanagari, that would have been, if it was anything to do with Devanagari. So I suggested to Prabhupada that why don't we take the Upadeshamrita, which is only 11 slokas, and do that, because that could be done really quick. You could do that in a really short time. And Prabhupada said, asked me if I had the book, which every Gaudiya Math devotee carries that little book, you know, in Hindi and Bengali. So I said, yeah, I do. So I gave it to Prabhupada and we started. And I couldn't keep up with him, so he got the dictaphone.
Okay.
But in the course of this, we would talk about things.
So what was how did that, I'm interested in that, how it proceeded. So you got the book and he wanted to, it was a kind of, you were assisting as kind of a collaborative process. So I
suggested it to him.
Yeah.
I suggested it to him because it was so short.
What was the role then?
Slokas, but
what was your role with Prabhupada and helping it?
He had asked me that he was working on Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yeah.
Which I'd already read it before, you know, other versions, and he wanted me to help. And I said, Prabhupada, what about the Upadeshamrita, which is 11 slokas? Because I was thinking this Chaitanya Charitamrita is going to take a long time. And this is something we could do really quick. And I thought it was really important. It's important enough that I would carry it around with me, and every Gaudiya Math devotee would, you know. You know, Dadati, Pratigranati, you know, the Upadeshamrita. So he said, okay, and give it to him, and he'd get a piece of paper and start writing, and he started talking. And I had to write it, and then I couldn't keep up, and then he said, bring a dictaphone.
Maybe, again, for the sake of viewers who aren't familiar with it, can we explain what that term of the book is, who wrote it, and, the essence of what it's about? That would be very interesting.
Yeah, Rupa Goswami, one of the 6 Goswamis, he wrote these 11 verses of advice. Upadesh means advice, and Amrita means immortal. Prabhupada called it nectar of instruction, but in any case, that was what I suggested to Prabhupada, that we translate this and do a commentary. And the commentaries in the Gaudiya Math version are Vishwanath Chakravarti and Bhakti Siddhanta, and a few people have gotten there's a few commentaries mixed in there. So when Prabhupada would be talking, I was asking him questions. I was asking him questions about Nitya Leela. I was asking him questions about Astakaliya Nitya Leela. I was asking him questions about the difference between Nitya Leela and Bhoma Leela, about Siddha Pranali, about I mentioned his guru and his guru's guru, and their Siddha Pranali names, and how all the self-realized devotees were aware of their self, of their identity, and how would we know this, and when would we know this? And I gave a couple of examples, like I mentioned Chota Krishna Das in Manasa Ganga, how he had tried to commit suicide when he heard that he couldn't get that information except from his guru who had already passed away, and he still got that information. And Prabhupada said there's no question about the guru's here or there. He said when you get to reach that point, then the guru will give, And I remember asked Prabhupada about, there's a verse at the end of Brahma Samhita, Pramanois tat saracharoi tarabhyasoi nirantaram bodhyan atmanam bhaktim yupittimam labhit. And I asked him about that, where it's saying when one realizes the supreme self, they also realize their own self, Does that mean simultaneous realization? And Prabhupada said, yes. And then I said, well, what about realizing yourself, Gurudev? And he said, that's the same thing. So that's going to happen the same way.
Is that that point that you're describing, is that specifically in Upadeshamrita, or is it just these were just part of the questions that you were asking?
Yeah, it's quite, yeah.
Yeah. So,
But there are things in there, like for instance, all the devotees would say, there's no Nitya Leela, we just got to go from one Brahmanda to the next and follow Krishna around. I'm like, what are you people talking about?
really?
And they were like denying there's such a thing as Nitya Leela.
My goodness.
And that it's all Gaudiya Vaishya, it's all Gaudiya nonsense. I mean, we're talking, ISKCON leaders are telling me this.
Wow.
And so I said to Prabhupada, one of the things was the Astakaliya Leela, Smarna Mangala Stotram by Kaviraj Goswami, as is expanded in Govinda Leela Amrita, is that the real Nitya Leela detail? And Prabhupada said yes.
Yeah.
I said, well, can we put that here in this slogan, in this verse? I think it was verse number 8. Can we put that here in the translation so that everybody knows it from you? And Prabhupada said, yes, you put it.
Okay, so that's
and so
you
things like that. Yeah.
So you were going through the verses and you were discussing it between you. Prabhupada was doing his translations, but also listening to you and your questions, and he probably developing. You were like a soundboard for him as well, and probably that's how you. Is that how it developed? Prabhupada was you, and you would reflect, and then and he would be using a dictaphone. Is that how the whole book developed?
Yeah. Basically.
Okay.
And I also asked him about Sarup Siddhi and how one attains that. And I was actually going to ask Prabhupada what his eternal form was. Right? I was afraid to do that because I thought he's either going to be angry with me for asking that, even though every Gaudiya devotee knows the Sarups of their guru, or he's wouldn't even maybe because he was acting like he didn't know it, like it was something he was going to realize when we reached that point. He was saying like so I was afraid to even ask him about that. But the point was that would be realized at the same time, because the Brahma Sanghita verse where it says one would Bodhyanatman Atmanam, one realizes the self and simultaneously their own self. What about your Swarup, Gurudev? He said that's the same thing. You'll realize that also at the same time.
What about, because for me, when I first read that book, and even since that time, because of all this so-called Guru Adhikar Tattva, quarrels about who's qualified. So in Upadeshamrita, there's that's the first kind of real book that I remember reading where there was an emphasis or the discrimination or the explanation of the Kanishta, the lower devotee, the Madhyam, the middle, and the Uttama. So can you remember, when you were doing those verses, did you have discussions about those things? Can you remember the discussions about that?
Well, the things those things are pretty simple. The thing I was really talking to him about was the esoteric stuff about the whole purpose of bhajan, and I think it's some more things, but everything that I wasn't asking Prabhupada to confirm something. I already knew this was correct.
Yes.
There's just no way that the whole Gaudiya Mat's wrong.
Yes.
I knew it was correct. And the ISKCON people weren't accepting it, and they were saying Prabhupada never said that. So okay, Prabhupada needs you to say this.
Yeah. Okay.
It's not like, is this correct or not? And Prabhupada's going to say, no, it's not correct, and I'm just going to blow my brains out because this is crazy.
Okay.
So Prabhupada said, of course it's correct. Prabhupada knew that I was talking about stuff that was fully correct and 100% correct.
So how long did you spend there? How long was Prabhupada in Mayapur, and how long did you spend there with him?
I think he was there. You'd have to look at the some of the history, but it was probably a couple of weeks in Mayapur.
Okay.
And then we went to Calcutta, and then we came back to Mayapur.
Okay. And then?
And then when we came back to Mayapur, Prabhupada called me in his room and showed me a letter. He showed me a piece of paper that had been printed in black and white with my picture on it. And it said, my name, alias so-and-so, alias so-and-so, deserted from the army, abandoned his parents, all kinds. Banraj had put out this thing that, just like an employee, just like an employer would put something out, if one of their employees quit, they're going to put something out and let everybody know this guy's.
A
'cause he was
rogue,
probably afraid he was going to
a
get.
rogue employee. Beware of.
Well, he was probably afraid. He was probably afraid that he might get in trouble for
Okay.
harboring a guy. I mean, you got. At first I was annoyed that because Prabhupada was like, "Look at this guy did to you." When I think back on it, I was like, "God, what else could he do? How could he not do that?"
But what did
he had vouched for me?
So that's in retrospect, looking at it with maturity.
Yes.
But in terms of at that moment when Prabhupada showed you that, and Bon Maharaj had said that, what did you actually feel yourself? What was going through?
I have to get out. I have to get out of here. I have to get out. Right. I told Prabhupada I have to get out because Prabhupada was saying he wanted me to go to. I just gotten caught by the police before I got there with David Unda in Amritsar. He said, "I want you to go to Amritsar and collect money." I was like, "Oh, God, maybe I should go over Niagara Falls in a barrel on the way."
Right.
So anyway, I said, Prabhupada, I got to get out of here because this is a bust. I mean, they're looking for me now. I don't even have any identity. Prabhupada didn't know I had no passport. Prabhupada didn't know all that.
But so you told him when he showed you that, did you then tell him the story?
Yeah.
Okay, and then what? Yeah. So then what? In that conversation, when you actually told him, when he showed you that, I'm interested to. Then what was the discussion, and then what happened due to that when you both discussed it?
What should I do, Prabhupada? And he said, well, the easiest thing to do is cross the border and go into Nepal.
Okay. Right there, he came up with that idea at that moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
You should go to Nepal.
And was it suggested that you go with Devananda together at that time? Or did that just follow naturally?
Devananda was kind of a free agent. Devananda was a bit of a free agent at that point.
Okay.
He was with me, and he was Prabhupada's disciple, but he was kind of just doing whatever he wanted.
Oh, okay. Okay. So that wasn't even
he was too much of a space cadet for Prabhupada to worry about organizing him. Because he used to be Prabhupada's secretary, but he was one of those kind of guys that would argue with Prabhupada about. Prabhupada would say something is lost, and Devananda would argue, no, it's not lost. We just don't know where it is.
Okay. So, literally, you'd been there for Mayapur a couple of weeks, went to Calcutta, came back. So it's all kind of...
In Calcutta, Prabhupada was so sick, unbelievably sick. He was absolutely like, if he would have passed away, it wouldn't have been a surprise. That's how sick he was.
Oh, my God.
And I was sleeping in the room with him and in his bedroom.
Was that Albert Road? In the Albert Road?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, what a horrible scene. I was like, all these hippies and all these devotees, and there's no one toilet, and there's this park across the way. It's just got, everybody's taking a dump in there.
Ah.
And it's just a nightmare scenario. Sannyasis and women and guys and grihastas all mashed together in this house. Oh man, it was so different than what I was used to.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my goodness. I even when I went to Albert Road, it was weird. Anyway, it's a strange. I mean, it's developed since then.
It was just horrible. It was like so far from an ashram.
Yeah,
it was like a loony bin. Yeah.
So
everybody was sick. Everybody had diarrhea. They were all nowhere's no toilet. There was nowhere to take a bath. It was like, oh my God, it was just incredible.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, times would. So, Prabhupada said, "Go to Nepal, go across the border, because it was you were in a difficult position." So then, what happened? You have told me before, so it's a long story. But maybe we're not going to go into every detail because we got limited time. But because it is an amazing thing. So you had 5 years with Bon Maharaj, a few weeks with Prabhupada, and it's not just with Bon Maharaj. You had all those stories about getting, building that school and meeting these people. It's a really big story you had, and now you're.
This was like October of '73, so I'd been almost 6 years with Bon Maharaj.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting because there I am joining the Krishna Temple in Amsterdam. I joined on the 12th of October, and before my 17th birthday, I'm like 10 years going into my own Krishna story. Okay, I joined in a converted garage in the red light district of Amsterdam. So, when you talk about Albert, Hare Krishna movement was not a Gaudiya Math ashram, let's put it that way. It was a completely different thing. So, you go off with Devananda and tell us a bit about, the journey and the story. And
went to Birgunj and crossed the. First of all, Prabhupada said, well, you should first go to. Prabhupada told me, to go to Nepal, but he said first of all you should go to. He said Devananda should go to Hyderabad, and you should go to Bombay.
Okay.
And he got me told them to get me a ticket. I had never been on a plane in 6 years.
Right.
And all of a sudden I'm on a plane going
Okay.
to Bombay. And I had no papers. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I was a sannyasi. I just get on a plane and no ticket. I mean, I had a ticket, but I didn't have any ID. It was just fun. Those days were really cool, And so I get down there and I get picked up at the airport in Bombay by Brahmananda. And I end up staying in the room together with Tamal Krishna. And Tamal Krishna helped me get a passport to leave the country.
Okay.
But the passport did not have any entry permit. It was just a blank passport with no entry, no visa, no anything. So I couldn't use it to leave India.
Oh, goodness. Right.
Which I used, but later on I got an entry permit into it. But that passport was.
Did it have your real name and a real photograph in it?
No. It was somebody else's picture and everything.
What was
Talk about scary. At least it was a guy,
But what was the point of that? I mean, how is that going to help you? I don't quite get that. It doesn't even look. I mean, what can you do with that type of passport?
I used it for years, for 3 years after that. 5 years, I think. Maybe about 4 years it was good. It was still good for about 4 years.
Okay.
So I used it for about
so
4
not
years.
your name.
Then I had to renew it. I had to renew it.
Okay.
Into an American embassy in Kathmandu with somebody else's picture, and I had to renew it. But I did the Narayan Kavacha.
Okay.
And I prepared myself, and I went in there, and Krishna protected me.
Wow.
As he had been doing all my life.
It's incredible that, yeah. Wow. A lot of people would not.
Krishna protects those who need it.
Yeah.
People who don't think they need protection don't get it because why should I help this guy if he doesn't need my help?
That's great. So okay. So you've gone to Bombay. You've got this dodgy passport, and then did you reconvene with Devananda at a place and cross the border together? Or did you meet up?
No. Then I went from there to Hyderabad.
Okay. Yeah.
And in Hyderabad, I was staying with Devananda. I'd never been to Hyderabad before. I was staying with Devananda, and who else was there? There was Akshayananda was there, and also one little guy that became a guru. I forget his name. Padma. No, he was a little guy who became a guru. Kind of a short guy. I forget his name, but he was there. I became friends with those guys, and I loved those. They were nice guys.
Was Mahamsa there at that time? Mahamsa?
No, but I have to get the name of the one guy.
So how long did
they were all super nice guys.
Nice, that's good. So, yeah. So you how long did you stay there in Hyderabad?
About a week, and then from there we took a train, took a train to Birgunj, I think.
Okay.
And Devananda, and I walked across the border, he went across, and then it was the winter time. It was the end of the 73 winter.
Ooh.
So we got to Nepal. We got to Nepal at night, freezing cold. I was barefoot. I didn't have a chadar. I want to talk about cold.
You didn't even have a chadar. Wow.
No, and the bus ride, from Birgunj to Kathmandu is absolutely horrifying.
Right. Oh my goodness.
I mean, you're on the mountain cliffs, and it's just like, good Lord.
Did you have any money at all? Any rupees or anything?
Yeah, I think not really. Not really. A little bit.
But you must have.
I don't remember didn't even have any pockets. I don't remember having even any pockets.
Did you have a bag with anything apart from what you were wearing? Wow. Okay, so because I did that journey, but in a different situation, and not much more. Just before Prabhupada passed, I did that. After being in India, so it's quite a big thing when you go up there. And at that time of the year, the temperature must have been really cold without chadars.
Well, we didn't go up there to preach.
No.
I mean, Prabhupada didn't tell me to go there to preach. He told me just to get out of India because I had to get out of India. And so we didn't really go there to preach because if you're going to go to Nepal to preach, you're going to preach to the Nepalis.
Yeah.
The last people you're going to talk to are a bunch of useless hippies that are all getting stoned and talking about Aleister Crowley and Satanism, and I mean, what are you going to do with those idiots? There's 100 of them, maybe, you know.
So when
And
you
so there's millions of Nepalis.
yeah, so when you
So
arrived,
going to Nepal to preach requires preaching to the Nepalis and don't have anything to do with the Westerners.
no. So you didn't go on any of that mission. It was just really a survival kind of thing. Get out of India, they're on to you, and so you didn't have a missive to do anything, you know, and you'd only just reconnected.
I was trying to trying to stay ahead of the shark, you know.
Yeah. So okay. So who did you know Freak Street and different places, and then you met that person who's quite well known, Ira Cohen, a poet, and all these people. A few people were. Maybe just describe what happened, and then you know the things that happened
On the way to Birgunj, we met some hippie on the train. He said his name was Jason, and he said, oh, there's a club up there, and there's so and Paul this and that, Randy that, and be sure and tell them I sent you, you know.
Okay.
So sure enough, we get there at night, and it's freezing cold, and we go to this Freak Street, and there's this club called the Eclipse.
Okay.
And we walk in there, and you know, and there's all these long-haired hippies, and they were just openly smoking dope, and you know, and playing hard rock. It was really weird, and then. They welcomed us in, and it was like, you know, I was just looking for some shelter. I wasn't looking to preach to any of these people. You know?
So did they say here have a room, you can crash out here, or what did they?
Well, you know, somebody said, hey, go stay in Swayambhu, and so we got taken over to Swayambhu, and we ended up crashing out in this bakery, which is just an abandoned place. And
oh, really? It was an abandoned place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I met some of those guys, you know, like. His name, this guy, what was his name? Of course, Ira, but there were some other guys too, you know, who like there was Heidi and what was his name? He had been the drummer of the Velvet Underground, the first drummer.
Okay,
I forget his name. So we were playing music, and you know, they were liking hearing these Bengali kirtans and stuff. Mm-hmm. It wasn't just music. I said, okay, what do you know? I'm playing these. They're all thinking that's really cool. Mm-hmm. They had no idea what it was about.
Did you have any cartels with you or anything like that? Anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
I had a mridanga.
Oh, you had a mridanga, so you were carrying a mridanga. Okay, I've got a better image now. So you've got a mridanga, you've got some cartels. Okay, and so you were a rock musician, ex-retired, you know, who's become a sadhu, and then there's the poets and a musician. So you sat down.
But nobody cared about that. No. Nobody could care less about that.
No. So it was actually super cool.
Unknown, you know?
So it was super cool though to be a sadhu with a mridanga and a cartel. You know, they were more interested in that than because that's why a lot of people actually ended up going to Nepal. Whatever it may have been, just to get high, but it was to experience the exotic spiritual side of the East.
Well, when we were staying in the bakery, some hippies were coming around, and David and I were leading kirtan. We were just doing kirtan. We weren't leading it. We were just doing kirtan.
Yeah.
And one of the devotees came by, was this Italian guy, and he was talking to us about Krishna, or rather we were talking to him about Krishna. He started getting really excited and really interested, and he was dancing outside and getting all blissed out. And I said to him, well, you should go to Mayapur and see Prabhupada because you're ready to go. You're ready to go, mm-hmm. You know. And he did. He went to Mayapur, and he ended up becoming a GBC now. I think he's a guru.
Okay.
His name was he's a guy in Italy. You know?
Yeah. I think I know who you mean, actually, yes.
He's a GBC there?
He was in Calcutta for a long time as well. I think I know him, you know. Okay.
Yeah, his name was, he was a guitar player. He had been a rock guitar player, long hair, you know. Mm-hmm. What did he change his name to? Because I never saw him after that.
Okay.
He got initiated in, like Sada, something like that. I forget his name.
And when you were walking around Kathmandu, hippies had been there for a while as being hippies, and then there was you and Devananda in your Hare Krishna robes. Did the Nepalese people did they look at you differently or treat you differently? I mean, because you could speak Hindi and stuff, and a lot of, even though Nepalese is kind of similar to Hindi, or they can understand it, were you connecting more with the foreigners there or with the locals? And how, you met a Baba there, didn't you? Kali, maybe you can explain.
Eventually.
Yeah.
No, initially we were just associating with the hippies.
Yeah.
or the local Westerners that were living there and had businesses and were doing stuff and were making a scene and
Yeah.
scammers and all kind. There was kind of like a community there, you know.
Yeah.
And so we were just kind of hanging out with them, not too much with the Nepalese, not too much with Nepalese. But then there was going to be a raid, a passport raid. And I didn't have a passport, or I had a passport but no visa or anything, and so we went out to hide from them because there was going to be a raid in Kathmandu. We were warned.
I
So
see.
we went out to Dhulikhel,
Okay.
and I got introduced to Kali Baba, Hari Siddhi Kali Baba.
Okay. Okay.
He was an over 100-year-old, Shivite Baba, and that was more like Shiva than he was a Shivite. You know? He didn't claim to be anything, but it was kind of like more like hanging out with Shiva than hanging out with a Shivite devotee. You know, it really felt like that. And he didn't speak any English or anything, but he was an interesting guy, interesting character, and respectful of Prabhupada, and he had a bunch of Shaligam Shilas, and he gave me the Shaligam Shila that I ended up worshiping to this day.
Really?
And that Prabhupada gave me permission to do that in writing.
Matura's Nandana.